It's Kubota 1505 4-cylinder diesel engine, and we're going to spill time it. This is the tools that we require. It's best to use a long bar to turn the engine and not a short bar. The short bar, we take it out because there's very little control on turning it. The long bar gives us better control. First thing we're going to do now is take off the stop solenoid. You can't time it with the stop solenoid in because it's de-energised the stop. Now the next thing we would do is remove the delivery valve on number 1 cylinder on the injection pump. When we take the delivery valve out, we've just put the spring into a small container of fuel so it's not getting contaminated the line on the bench. We're also going to take out the delivery valve from the delivery valve holder, which is there, it's coming out just now. And put it in the fuel, so it's now kept clean. The delivery valve holder cap is back on now with the O-ring. It needs to be tightened up fairly firmly, that's it. Now we're going to put on the swan neck. Now you'll also see that we've rigged up a gravity feed of fuel. You can make this up yourselves. You can hold an old tin or something, put a hose on it, and you feed it with gravity. You'd never use the lift pump on the engine to do the spill timing test, or the mechanical lift pump. It must be done by gravity. The next thing we'll do now is find number 1 cylinder firing, which will be number 4 cylinder rocking. That's number 4 exhaust valve closing and inlet valve opening. You're going to have number 4 exhaust valve closing and inlet valve just opening. That is top dead centre 1. Now we're going to turn it back quarter of a turn now. Quarter of a turn. And now we're going to turn on the fuel supply. And if you look at the swan neck, you'll see the fuel starting to come out. That's it's dripping there just now. You see the drips? Now we're going to turn this in the correct direction of rotation until the fuel stops dripping, but you must catch it just as the last drip stops and it holds on the end of the swan neck. That's it, just that's spill cut off. Now we'll have a look at the figures on the flywheel. What have we got? The figure on this engine should be 20 and we have 15 degrees. So the spill timing is too late, so we have to take the fuel pump out and adjust it by taking out 1 shim. So we cut off the fuel supply and now remove the fuel pump from the engine. Underneath the fuel pump there's a selection of shims. How many shims is there? 3. So what we're going to take out is 1 shim. These shims have different values on them and they're coded by notches, which we'll explain later. So we're taking one shim out. Now we're going to take off the throttle plate to allow us to enter the rack pin into the governor fork. If you don't do this, you run the risk of bending the governor fork, and that's an awful lot of trouble. Now on the throttle plate on the 1505, one bolt has a copper washer on it because it's drilled straight into the crankcase. The rest are all blind holes and they don't leak. When you take the throttle plate off, you've got to unhook the main governor spring. That's it. Now when you offer the pump back to it, you've got to make sure that the rack pin, this is the rack pin here, engages into the fork here. And if you don't get that right, you cause a lot of damage. Turn on the fuel supply again, turn the engine back quarter turn, so that the fuel is then coming from the spill pipe. Now turn it again till it slows down and just stops. Accuracy in turning the engine is important, so that's why you use a long bar. That's it cut off there, and we should be here, and that's it bang on 20 degrees. That's exactly what it should be for this engine. Now what we do is we shut the fuel supply off, take off the swan neck and put the delivery valve back in. Again, this must be kept clean. The O-ring offers quite a lot of resistance when you try to take the delivery valve holder out. This has got to be tightened very firmly, otherwise it will leak fuel at high pressure. The next thing back on is the throttle stop plate. You've got to hook up the main governor spring again. On the nuts and the one bolt with the copper washer. Just check that the throttle lever's moving back and forward and stop lever's moving back and forward. That's it. And then the last thing you go on is stop solenoid. that's it. On the shims, there's codes on the shims. There's 2 holes, 1 hole, and no holes. But we'll go into that, we'll give a separate bit with what thickness these are.